Back to Miller. Oh, my goodness.
Herbert.
Sidearm sling, and it's a touchdown.
Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, good spin move by Filipowski for the news. Give him 9.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Beef Upfront podcast here on Pick Swap Media. This is your host, Ryan Coyle, continuing today with our coverage of our college football preview as we lead up to the beginning of the regular season. Recording this today on August 15th, we are 11 days away from week 0, where we'll have two top teams playing in USC. They play San Jose State, and then Notre Dame will be playing Navy. So we get to look at two of the top 15 teams in the country on the first week of college football, week 0. But then the next week, Labor Day weekend, September 2nd, is where things really ramp up. And we'll be trying to hit on as many of these top-level teams before with these individual episodes before the season starts to get you prepared on some of the better teams, and trying to give you a better understanding of where you might find some success or some failures with them on the futures betting market, as well as heading into the season, what type of team this team could be. So we've already hit on Ohio State. Today we'll be hitting on Alabama, where the AP poll just came out on Monday. They come in slotted at number 4. I believe this is the lowest that they've entered this season since 2009. So still number 4 in the country, still high standards to follow with that. But Alabama not being viewed as dominant this year. As we know, they're a team that usually is coming in, checking in at number 1 or 2 in the poll. They're down at number 4 this year, but still high expectations. Georgia is the number 1 team in the country coming in, followed by Michigan and Ohio State, and then Alabama. So if you had a college football playoff today, technically you would have 2 SEC teams and 2 Big Ten teams, but we could see Georgia and Alabama face off in the SEC title game. Michigan and Ohio State obviously can't. But this is a big year for Alabama, I think, in terms of getting that throne back, getting that crown back from Georgia after they've won back-to-back national titles, including last year's 15-0 victory, 15-0 season, where they just ran through. It seemed like the entire season had a scare there against Ohio State in the college football playoff, but then they absolutely steamrolled TCU in the national title game. So big year for Alabama, and I think Nick Saban, if he wants to regain that crown and that throne in the SEC and be the king of the college football world, I think that they need to dethrone Georgia this year, or Georgia's just going to continue to run, and Saban's not getting any younger. So as I've touched on kind of a few times, a huge year for Alabama. We'll hit on the coaching game, their 22 season a little bit, their key losses, and then go through their offense and defense, as well as a little schedule preview. So when you look at the head coach, I think the best coach in college football history, Nick Saban, entire record at Alabama is 189-27. So he's won 87.5% of his games throughout his tenure as the head coach at Alabama. Has won 6 national titles at Bama, 7 total, including his title at LSU, and he's won 8 SEC crowns, 10 total, a couple titles there at LSU as well. 2022, a bit of a down year for their standards. Alabama's standard is to be competing in a national championship game every single year. They didn't do that last year. They fell short. They went 11-2, but their 2 losses were on the final plays of the game. One, a crazy field goal attempt that was a knuckleball that just snuck in against Tennessee, and then against LSU scored in overtime and went for it on the 2-point conversion at home to take down Alabama. So both their losses last year were on the final play of the game, and they still had a down year technically. But they did go on to beat Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl. Did not play in the SEC title game last year, though, for the first time since 2019. This is an Alabama team that, as always with them, they're going to lose a lot of talent to the NFL draft, and it's never a rebuild for Alabama. It's a reload, but they lost some key players, including the number 1 overall pick and number 2 overall pick in the draft, in quarterback Bryce Young and edge rusher Will Anderson. 2 massive losses, and then they lost another first-round pick and running back Jahmyr Gibbs, who was a really do-it-all player for them last year. Great out of the backfield as a receiver and just as a rusher. Lost some other key guys and starters in safety Brian Branch, offensive lineman Tyler Steen, defensive lineman Byron Young, safety Jordan Battle, tight end Cameron Latu, linebacker Henry To'oTo'o, and safety DeMark Helms. All those guys were drafted. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You had 11 guys get picked last year on this Alabama team. And they also had a number of guys get picked up through undrafted free agency. So a lot of talent going out, but that means a lot of talent, and the recruits that really spent the last year or two developing have the chance to go up there, step in, and really make their mark now for Alabama. So when you look at the offensive side of the ball, the big story is Bryce Young out at quarterback and a huge quarterback battle, huge quarterback competition in the works now. I think this year, though, we're going to see a flip of the switch identity-wise with this Crimson Tide offense. After their domination in the 2010s with a really heavy ground and pound approach, game manager at quarterback when you had A.J. McCarron, you had Greg McElroy, you had Blake Sims, you just had guys that weren't going to be high-level NFL players, draft picks, but guys that are just game managers and let everyone around them do the work. I think we could see them go back to that this year. They switched it up in the second half of the 2010s and the first few years so far of the 2020s by going with more of a pass-heavy attack, spread it out, let all these playmakers we have, and let these gifted quarterbacks that we started to bring in kind of go out there and do some work. That really started at the forefront with Jalen Hurts. Then it was followed by Mac Jones, Tua, and now the latest in Bryce Young. All those guys three of those are first-round picks. Jalen Hurts is up there now being discussed as probably the best of the bunch, and he was a second-round pick and just got a $250 million contract extension. So all these gifted passers, let's take it and let's let them, air it out to guys like Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Jamison Williams, amongst others, John Mechie, all these talented receivers. We saw Alabama just spread the ball around. Now they don't really have, it seems like, that go-to guy at the quarterback spot. Mac Jones wasn't really looked at it like that, but he had probably the best weapons out of all of them, and they just let him kind of throw the ball around the schoolyard. Jalen Hurts, not that great of a passer, but still had a lot of talent to work with during his time at Alabama. He's obviously evolved as a much better passer now in the NFL. But Tua had so many weapons, and he was viewed as a good passer. And Bryce Young, probably the best natural thrower of the football and just the best overall, I think, quarterback, at least coming out of college, out of all of them. And they were loaded with receivers. But last year, we kind of saw the receivers in the Alabama, in the offensive weapons, kind of take a step back. And they don't really have that many great dynamic guys on the outside this year. But they're still going to have linemen and still going to be really strong up front. With an unproven quarterback in the works, what's the best bet going to be? I think it's going to be kind of going back to that ground heavy approach. And they brought in offensive coordinator Tommy Rees from Notre Dame, who's been proven to be a guy that likes to run the football. So they have Jalen Milroe, who is a very dynamic dual threat quarterback, not the best thrower of the football, but it's got some serious 4.3, 4.4 speed, could really open things up in the running game. Ty Simpson, a former 5-star recruit at the quarterback spot. And then they brought in Tyler Buckner, a transfer from Notre Dame. He came in after spring ball. So I don't think that was a good indication for Milroe or Ty Simpson for their playing spring ball. And then Buckner has the connection to Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame. So I think he might have the leg up right now. I'm not really sure what the word is out of camp right there now in Alabama. I assume Nick Saban's probably keeping a pretty sealed lip down there. But I think Buckner might have that edge just because of that experience, but Jalen Milroe's been there for a few years now. Ty Simpson, he's been there for a full year. So it's really a 3-horse race. So I think it's kind of a 33-33-33 split with them. But I think come game one against Middle Tennessee State, I think it's going to be Jalen Milroe, who has 4.4 speed at the quarterback spot. And I think with Reese calling the plays and that evolution or, revolution with the running game and what they used to be, I think they might try to bring that back this year. And I think Milroe gives them the best chance to be able to mash people in the running game. So I think game one, we could see that, but I also think there's a very good chance that Buckner starts with his experience with Tommy Rees, and Ty Simpson might be the most overall talented quarterback of the bunch. So pure three pie slice right there with these guys at the quarterback spot. But my take on the situation, I think I'm going to lean to the Milroe spot there. Jason McLean and Roydell Williams appear to be the two top backs in the backfield this year. They should be guys that rotate for touches and run behind a really strong offensive line. And whoever does wind up playing quarterback will have two very solid receivers to lean on, Jermaine Burton and Ja'Cory Brooks, but they don't have that Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Jamison Williams at the receiver spot. Another reason why I think they might be a ground-heavy team and really depend on the running game. Offensive line going to be very strong as well, headlined by J.C. Latham at tackle. He's most likely going to be a top 10 pick. 3 really strong tackles in this class with Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, and then the offensive tackle, can't pronounce his name, but out of Penn State. there's three really strong tackles, and I think we could see all of them go in the top 10, and J.C. Latham might be the best of the bunch. So I think the lack of current trust with the quarterback, especially bringing in another one after the spring, having a 3-horse race means we're going to see multiple quarterbacks, if not all three, get some time week one before during the Middle Tennessee game. Alabama's entering that game as a 39.5-point favorite, so they should easily be able to roll them in that one. We should see all three of those guys get live reps in that one, and then I think they're going to have to decide by week 2 when they play Texas. That's number 4 Alabama versus number 11 Texas. So you're going to want to have your guy kind of in the fold there, not be rotating guys in and out. If Ty Simpson or Tyler Buckner do get the job, I do expect Jalen Milroe still to have kind of a featured part on that offense just because of how dynamic he can be in the run game and the explosion that he could provide there. So with a lack of elite weapons, I think on the outside on the perimeter, we could see, and with the new offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, and his love for the ground game and his ability to really draw up some good running plays, I think we're going to see this old Alabama team at the beginning of the Saban era and really kind of depend on mashing people there and then winning on defense as well. When we turn our attention to the defensive side of the ball, my opinion on the offense and the transition going back to being a run-heavy team also depends on this defense being a strong unit again and the offense having faith that the defense can win them these low-scoring type games and not having to score 45, 50 points to go out there and win. At the end of the day, they're Alabama. They aren't going to be short on talent at all, and they do have 5 stars littered across the unit. The biggest move of the offseason, though, for them, from what I've heard and what I've read, might be bringing back former defensive coordinator Kevin Steele. He was Alabama's first defensive coordinator during the Saban era, back when they played bully ball. And if you start to connect the dots on why I think they might return to their former style of play, you could see bringing a running offensive coordinator known for his running game. Not having an elite quarterback, more so of a game manager, bringing back your former defensive coordinator, short people on defense. A lot of that kind of back and forth, I think that's how you kind of connect the dots. Some headliners on this defense, though, Kool-Aid McKinstry at cornerback and then edge rusher Dallas Turner, both of whom appear set to be first-round picks next year. And then missing Will Anderson is obviously a huge blow to this defense. He had 34.5 career sacks. That's 34.5 sacks out of your lineup, and as well as some really good run defense. But this unit had 6 players get drafted last year. But as the case with Alabama, they don't rebuild, as I touched on. They reload. They're going to have the next infusion of youth coming up. A lot of turnover in the linebacking group and secondary. With Henry To'oTo'o, he's one of the better linebackers, one of the key cogs in this Alabama defense over the past few years. He's gone, and most notably, Brian Branch and Jordan Battle at safety. That means there's going to be some more unproven but talented players on this unit. So many young guys during this transition. I think that's another part of why let's run the ball, not put so much pressure on our defense to go out there so many snaps and be competing in these high-level shootout games. Let's kind of make things easier, a little bit more simple on them, and kind of give them fresh legs, allow them to be off the field as much as they could. But I do think this Alabama defense that could be playing their best ball by the end of the season. As we transition now into a bit of a little schedule breakdown for Alabama. 1 second, let me share my screen. I have this team going 11-1 this year. A pretty interesting schedule opening up against Middle Tennessee. We usually see one of those weak opponents early. Then they host Texas, who Texas outplayed Alabama last year, certainly has a chance to beat them. That's probably going to be they're 4-11 right now. Alabama being 4 and Texas and 11. I do have Alabama winning that game, but Texas certainly has a shot to go in there, especially if Alabama doesn't have that quarterback situation figured out yet. At South Florida, that's a really interesting game for Alabama to go to South Florida. That's a bit funny there, but I have a win there, a win versus Ole Miss, a win at Mississippi State, at Texas A&M, a win as well, versus Tennessee a win, or versus Arkansas a win, versus Tennessee a win. I'm going to have them losing to LSU, beating Kentucky, beating Chattanooga, and beating Auburn. So this is an Alabama team that I certainly still have high expectations for. But going 11-1, losing to LSU, meaning LSU most likely going to the SEC title game, and they're not. That's a a down year for people in Alabama standards. They're expected to be in that SEC title game every single year. But this team's schedule is set up great for them, though. I think they get some of their toughest opponents at home with Texas, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Tennessee, and LSU. Even though I have LSU beating them, you get all those teams at home, basically the toughest teams on your schedule. That's going to be that's a major edge to them. Going to Texas A&M certainly going to be a battle. I think Texas A&M is going to be a little bit overrated again this year. So I have Alabama winning that game. But I do have this Alabama team with an 11-1 regular season, with their only loss being to LSU. If LSU does say just go on to beat Georgia eventually in the SEC title game, I think we still could see Alabama sneak in as that number 4 team, also depending on how strong of a year Texas has. But not the most loaded schedule this year. Arkansas, I expect to take a bit of a step back. Ole Miss is probably going to be like an 8-4 team. Tennessee expectations are high, but maybe like 9-3. They have to get, I think, to the SEC title game if they want to be, that 1 or 2 seed. But I could see them finishing the year at their current ranking at that number 4 spot and sneaking into the playoff. And who knows? But this team's season's all going to ride on what happens at that quarterback spot. Are they able to form the identity that they want to? I think the identity change that's potentially looming could do wonders for this club in the long run for the season, and also help mitigate the lack of top-end talent on offense. That was the thing I noticed most about Alabama while watching Bryce Young film last offseason. They didn't really have that top-end talent, and a lot of it was Bryce ball out there. So I think they might have to kind of work on that this year, not having some of these elite type of players, and really just try and simplify things and try and bring it back to the old glory days of that bully ball that Alabama used to play. So that's my take this year on the Crimson Tide. As we said, number 4 coming into the year. We've already done in the episode on number 3, Ohio State. We'll be doing one on number 1, Georgia, number 2, Michigan. We're also going to try and on some of these other major teams like LSU, Florida State, Clemson. All as we gear up to the eventual Labor Day weekend kickoff. Even after week 0, we'll still have a few preview pods coming out. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk soon.